I'm going to impose 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. You know what? You are affecting your own firms, U.S. firms established in Mexico. Look, surprisingly or not, maybe something similar is happening in China, but in Mexico, the harsh critiques and the blackmailing from President Trump vis-à-vis Mexico, among other countries, has unified a lot Mexicans. The polls for the Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo have improved substantially these weeks. No, the president has tried not to enter into a detailed discussion with President Trump, but she has always highlighted that we and she and the public sector in Mexico have to keep a cool head, not to engage in a daily discussion with the President of the United States. So it has unified Mexico. I expect that in the future, the Trump administration will continue pressing a lot of countries, and this is not a negotiation strategy, but a blackmail strategy. No? Either you do this, or I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, don't you dare to take countermeasures, because if you are taking countermeasures on my tariffs, I will increase my original tariffs. No, so yes, I expect that the Trump administration in the next 4 years will continue with this strategy and will continue threatening lots of countries: Panama, Denmark, the European Union, China, Canada, Mexico, and all the countries you can imagine. They will continue with this strategy, and yes, they will impose new tariffs, as, by the way, they did, they will do on aluminum and steel, with new 25% tariffs to all countries of the world. The steel sector in Mexico generates around 700,000 jobs in Mexico, but more importantly are the so-called forward linkages of steel, which means steel is an input for dozens of other sectors, from auto parts, automobiles, machinery, but also telecommunications, shipbuilding, etc., etc. No, so 25% tariff is a deep cost for many firms established in Mexico. Mexico has, surprisingly, a trade deficit in steel with the United States. So yes, Mexico exports steel to the United States, but we import more steel than we export with the United States. So imposing a tariff would apparently not make too much sense, no? And secondly, the most important exporter of steel to the United States is by far Canada. Canada exports 41% of all steel imports of the United States. So the strongest affected and impacted country will be first Canada, and 10% of Mexican exports to the US are of steel, no? So yes, Mexico will be affected. And by the way, the main steel exporters from Mexico are foreign firms, and mainly US firms, no? So tariffs, 25% tariffs, will mainly affect US firms established in Mexico. This makes the picture, if you want to, or the video, much more complicated than simply saying, I'm going to impose 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. You know what? You are affecting your own firms, US firms established in Mexico. I believe it is very important to understand and to have two or three concepts to understand what has been going on in the United States in the last 5 to 10 years and what we will have to expect in the next 4 years of the Trump presidency. The first concept is new triangular relationships. Since 2017, Trump, in his first presidency, defined a great power competition between the United States and China. And since we are going to witness in the next years, and I believe in the next decades, this continuous confrontation between the United States and China, the two biggest economy of the world, the main topic will be how will third regions, Latin America, Africa, Asia, or countries, Vietnam, Mexico, Argentina, how will we react very pragmatically vis-a-vis hundreds of topics, no? From tourism to 5G to artificial intelligence, but also Confucius Institutes, no? And since 2022, what we have been analyzing in detail is the topic of security shoring. The United States, as a result of the profound competition between China and the United States, and in which China has been able to upgrade in terms of innovation, in terms of technology, as we have been witnessing in the last years, from Huawei to BYD to Deepscale and to lots of different firms that we will get to learn in the next years also. The United States, since 2022, very clearly highlights the main topic in our policy against China is our national security, security shoring. No? What does this mean? This means that issues such as trade, innovation, high tech, semiconductors, electric vehicles, etc., will all be under the heading of national security. How does this affect our national interest and our national security? And by the way, fundamental for third countries. Mexico, will you integrate in our policy against China? Or are you going to be against the United States? And this has been particularly clear in the last 3 weeks since the beginning of the Trump presidency regarding issues such as Greenland, such as the Panama Canal, and other topics. I remind you of the heading of the electoral process of Trump in the last months. But the topic that the President Trump has continuously highlighted, oriented to Republicans and probably some Democrats in the United States. The heading is MAGA, Make America Great Again. No? So it is a very conservative perspective. No? It's something like going back to the future. No, this MAGA expects to get back to the 1950s and 1960s in the 21st century. This is impossible, no? And this is impossible because, well, yes, in economic, technological, innovation terms, in the 1950s and 1960s, the United States has had an hegemonic power. Among other things, there is a small detail, and the country called China that is upgrading and is already has the leadership in an important group of global value chains, and so MAGA is impossible to achieve. No, you cannot close your eyes and say, I don't see China. No, I don't see Huawei. I don't see BYD. I don't see what China has been achieving in the last decade and what probably China will achieve in the next decade. No, so MAGA is an impossible task. But it tells you very well what Trump wishes to do and expects to do in the next 4 years, no? And generating, by the way, massive uncertainty worldwide in terms of economics, politics, but also migration, etc. The prediction is that there is no prediction. No? We will have in the short term lots of executive orders, no? Like we have seen in the third 3 weeks, no? On February 1st, regarding Mexico and Canada, I will punish you in 1 month if you do not stop migration, if you do not stop fentanyl, if you do not do this. Best case scenario from a Canadian and Mexican perspective. Okay, we do comply with some of the topics relevant for the US at the beginning of March. You know what? In the beginning of March, new executive order. Now I request you to close all Confucius institutes in Canada and Mexico. I don't want to see them. If you do not comply with that, 15% tariffs, not in March, but in 1 month in April. Okay, Canada and Mexico closed all their Confucius institutes in April. You know what? I don't want to see Chinese investments. You have 1 month to close all Chinese investments in May. Otherwise, 15%. Okay, so I get rid of all Chinese investment. Note the irony, impossible. And in June, you know what? I don't want to see Chinese infrastructure in subways, in ports, in airports, in telecommunications. July, okay, you got rid of this. No, this is a never-ending process. No, a never-ending process. Difficult. I think very strongly that in the short term, and this is already happening, all these executive orders will have legal limitations within the United States. No, some of them are completely illegal. No, so you will have different legal instances within the United States, and I believe you will have also a group of countries worldwide, BRICS, for example, that will say, you know what, stop with this. I will not enter any kind of discussions. This is not a negotiation. It's a blackmailing process. If you don't do what I want, I will do this, I will do that, etc. That's called blackmailing, not negotiation. So I foresee the next 6 months at least, they will be very, very difficult. And particularly for weaker countries and close to the United States, such as Latin America and Canada.